let's start with just easy talking to a webcam content. And that, of course, is I'm going to give an overall review of the major because, you know, we watched the whole thing together. I've had time now to go and watch all of the VODs after the major, so I've actually heard the games being cast by the casters, and so obviously I was very vocal about the last major, the one I worked in Stockholm, because I didn't have a great time there, didn't think it was a particularly strong event. So, you know, I'm going to give some thoughts about this one. Let's see how long I can talk into a webcam for, with you guys being interested in it. But anyway, before we get into that, obviously there's sponsoring up there, midnight.com. They were super happy with all of the support they received during the major. Down there, elitejewels.gg, and of course as well, nordvpn.com/RLS. So look, we'll review the major. Let's start with an easy one, production. And by production, I mean all the technical aspects of the show, and probably a little bit of like ancillary stuff that doesn't quite fit into it. First things first, overall, we can all agree it was much improved over Stockholm. I did a recent episode of Pop Flash where, you know, Duncan sort of jokingly said, yeah, it was about 2015 levels. So, you know, we're up to that for PGL. I think that was perhaps a little bit, you know, disparaging because obviously in 2015 we weren't doing really big stadium live events to the sort of same degree we are now. But overall, I think it wasn't flawless by any stretch of the imagination. You know, on the first few days, especially, sound issues, again, this is a persistent problem with PGL to a point it's become something of a hallmark of their broadcasts. And I'm talking about before we even got in the stadium. So it is kind of worrying, you know, that like you're running a pre-set up studio event that has no like audience to worry about, no new venue to worry about. You've got all the time in the world to bed in, and still on the first days you're having technical problems, you're having audio problems, and these audio problems, as I understand, were impacting on some of the staff again, and it's just something you have to get right. And also, look, I'll give you guys a little bit some inside info on things that talent really don't like. And that is that a large part of what you do pre-broadcast on what they call rehearsal, it is never about rehearsing the show, which is what a rehearsal should be about. It should be, this is the run of show, these are the segments that are coming, you know, in the show, in this order. You might want to practice some things you're going to say, and you do like a rehearsal of how the show's going to flow with fake content, and you jump around. That's what a rehearsal is meant to be, right? What rehearsals have ended up in esports are you, the talent, who don't need to be here for this, come to the studio, put on a headset while some cunt makes noises in your ears. And it pisses everyone off for the entirety of the broadcast. It is a waste of time. And what I would say to anyone doing an event is, you don't need your guy that you're paying, you know, £1,000 a day, probably more these days. You don't need your star-studded talent to come to a studio, put on a headset while you go, can you hear that? Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Can you hear that now? What about now? Can you hear that now? Is that too loud? Is that too quiet? What about now? Or have me go 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Can you hear me now? What about on talkback? 1 2 1 2. You don't need an award-winning broadcaster for that. You in the production truck should be doing all of that shit before your broadcast talent even gets into the studio. And I'll tell you, nothing puts talent more in a bad mood more than when the rehearsal is a waste of their time. It sets a sour tone for the show. And I know because I've run these shows. But what I used to do was I wouldn't have my talent come in for what is ostensibly a sound check. I would do the sound check myself with my team, and everything would be working fine. So when the talent got there, all we were concentrated on was the content. That's how it should be. That's the fucking standard. So I'll repeat this for everyone in the industry right now. If you're going to waste the time of your broadcast talent to do things your sound crew should be doing, you're already setting yourself up for a bad event. And that isn't to say there aren't specifics. People might have sensitive hearing, people might be deaf, and they might need to increase the volume. But these are adjustments, micro adjustments that can be made on the fly. You should understand how your audio setup is. And unfortunately, one of the things that's happened and I don't work a lot of events, but one of the things that's happened is since E-League, there's been a backslide into, rehearsals basically not having anything to do with the show. And that was something I did notice at PGL, and I imagine it was the same this time around based on the results. Anyway, on top of that, the first day in the stadium in Antwerp, the stage opening was brilliant. The opening cinematic movie, brilliant, narrated by Shocks, the queen of esports. You know her, you love her. She did a great job. I know she was a little bit nervous because she's never done that type of work before. She aced it. She's a pro. She's going to. So, I thought the opening to this was way stronger than PGL Stockholm's stadium opener. And as someone who was there in the stadium opener, the sound didn't go out. We talked about it on the No Majors Club. When I came out with my wrestling belt, which, by the way, fat lad with a wrestling belt, it's not prime content by any stretch of the imagination. And as Henry rightly pointed out, self-indulgent joke, waste everyone's time probably, but it didn't even go out to the crowd. They didn't even hear it. So the people in the audience couldn't even hear what the desk was saying at the start. The opening cinematic was a bit insipid. So yeah, they definitely got it way better this time around. The opening cinematic was great. The opening to the show was great. They had the Antwerp mayor come in, didn't they? He came in and then he said to Shocks, "I would love to get a selfie with you and the crowd." And everybody went, "Oi, oi, oi." And it's kind of funny because the mayor of Antwerp, if I remember right, if you look on Wikipedia, you can look up, apparently he did an interview where he had no trousers on and he thought nobody could see he had no trousers on. This is like a couple of years ago. So, the guy's obviously a bit of a political liability or something. So, anyway, whatever. That's fine. All good. Then we get to the stadium games. We'll talk a little bit about the crowd in a moment. But the crazy thing was, they did it again with the stadium on day one. It had a profound echo. And I heard some people, they were responding on Reddit and saying, actually, the echo is an affectation. They added it as a stylistic choice, and it was reverb they deliberately added. Definitely, you would not do that for the feed going out to the people at home. So I don't know why people were saying that. That seems to be patently ridiculous to me. But anyway, there was an echo, and it was a noticeable one. The problem you have with echoes like that, it's very jarring for a listener. You will always get a slight echo, a slight doubling of the sound in a live event. But you want it to be as minimal as possible. You want the delay to be as little as possible. It was pretty weird to sort of see people try and defend it a little bit on the subreddit. It was bad on day one. It got better after that. And I am sad to report, from what I've been told, it also had impacted on some of the casters. Some people were getting echoes in their ears. Some people couldn't hear themselves at certain times. There were issues, once again, moving into the stadium. Fortunately, we didn't wait until the very last day to get them resolved, and I thought we had a pretty great show. So look, all told, it's not PGL's finest hour. They did improve from Stockholm. You can make a determination for yourselves about whether or not you think their performances across two back-to-back majors warrants them being front-runners for future events. But spoiler, due to their relationship with Perfect World and by extension Dota 2 and therefore by extension Valve, they're always going to be in contention for events from Valve. So just letting you know. Anyway, production overall, I'll be generous. I'll give it a 6. Yeah, I'm going to invent an arbitrary out of 10 rating. So next, let's talk about the casting. Big bone of contention around some of the casting hires. You know, we talked about it. I was of the opinion that, yeah, it sucks that there's no, like, Anders, Semler, Moses, Sadikis, like legendary guys. But here's the other thing, and I made this point. We were going to have to pass the torch at some point. You cannot have an industry full of gatekeeping boomers. It's never healthy, it's never good, and it's happened in esports before multiple times. And, you know, you've got to cycle in new talent. You can have some gatekeeping boomers. You can have some boomers that don't gatekeep at all, and they want to support talent and help people, and they can pass their experience on. But you can't have an entirely inexperienced crew. You have to balance it out. And I think in general, when I looked at the list of talent, you had 4 casters that were debutantes at a major. I think Blair might have been casting for the first time at a major. Apologies if that's wrong. I know he worked on the analysis desk at the one we did together. Obviously, Vince has done a major before, but it was the series at Face It, and that major was obviously a shit show. So the stalwarts here, incredibly, were sponge and machine in terms of, like, number of, you know, big tournaments where they've had, like, finals and stuff like that. It was a very inexperienced pool. Vince was the veteran out of all of these guys, but you wouldn't have thought that if you listen to the casting. I think on day one, I am in the stadium. I'm just going to ignore all of the quarterfinals because of the persistent tech problems. And it's not fair to judge casters on work that is impacted by production. What I will say is this. I would urge anyone who thinks that Harry and Hugo are not ready for the biggest events, for majors, go and listen to the FaZe Team Spirit cast. Me and Anders, when we were hanging out around the No Majors Club, Anders, like, we were just shooting the shit. And he said to me, did you hear Harry and Hugo's cast? And it was before I'd listened to it. And I said, no, I'm going to probably listen to that tonight after the show. And Anders said, it is one for the ages. And I can think of no one more equipped to give a definitive judgment on something like that. You know, I talked to the guys after the quarterfinals. I know they were disappointed. And what they said was, like, if day one was a 6 out of 10 from us, Harry said, I promise you a 10 out of 10 tomorrow. Well, you know, the next one was FaZe Team Spirit, and that is a 10 out of 10 game with a 10 out of 10 cast. You cannot listen to that and not hear 2 people at the top of their game relishing being in a big studio for the first time, enjoying themselves, but not doing that thing we have a tendency to do in online games where the stakes are a little bit lower, where we're a little bit aloof, a little bit flippant. We talk about different things, you know, like at the North American RMR for a game that, you know, a 5th place decider. Yeah, we're going to shoot the shit and have some fun. They understood the occasion. They understood how to work the crowd. It was just fantastic work from them in their first ever big stadium outing. So 10 out of 10 for them. Launders and Scrawny, again, fantastic work. I made a point to message all of the guys after the event and just say, like, you know, fucking well done. Because, listen, we got an event in terms of casting that is as good as anything we ever had in the golden age. I know we miss Henry. I know we miss Sado. I know we miss Anders and Semler. You know, I know we've been blessed with so much talent down the years. What we do is we have a tendency to judge this new generation by an almost impossible standard. But I tell you what, I feel comfortable doing that now because these guys met that standard. Like Launders and Scrawny now, they are one of the best duos working in all of esports right now. Comfortable with each other, competent with a crowd, good at narratives and storylines, very good chemistry between the two of them, understand their role, which is, you know, Launders will be the bit more dry, analytical guy, but quick-witted, sharp, will throw out a joke. Scrawny, the hype man, a little bit goofier in his comedy. Oh, better turn that off. What's up? Probably the boys. Now, how dare you? The old boys club are going to kick me out. So, yeah, anyway. So, fantastic cast, you know, like 9.5 out of 10 for them. Vince and Blair. This one, like, honestly, it's a newer duo. It was a pairing that was put together, and they haven't had a lot of table time. What I will say is the cast that they did, which was Copenhagen Flames Ents. That is like Vince. That was vintage Vince. That's as good as anything Vince has ever done. Vince is like, again, a super underappreciated talent in my opinion. Like Vince has been criminally underused in his career, like criminally. And that was a cast where he deliberately wanted to show what people are missing out on. Maybe he won't work another major or another big event, but he fucking put all of it into it. You could tell that's one of those casts that you do when you know you don't have a game tomorrow and you think, fuck it, I'll go all out. And he did. And Blair met him in terms of energy. I just think still there was a little bit of role overlap. There was like a little bit where, you know, occasionally Blair would want to pick up and do the play-by-play. And I would have played this, if I was them, a bit more traditional in terms of play-by-play and color. I would have divided it in a more old school way, because to mix play-by-play and analysis and bounce off each other, it takes so many hours to get to that level that if you don't have that, it's going to be a little bit, you know, turgid in some areas. But I think 8 out of 10 for their cast in the stadium, and that obviously takes into account as well, they were probably plagued by the same tech problems as everyone else. So, and then Machine and Sponge. How do I want to frame this? Because I hate this idea of the number 1 duo, the number 2 duo, the number 3 duo, when everyone's good at different things and has different styles. But I think let's call them the prestige duo, I think is fair. They are guys that you want probably doing your finals. They are the guys that when there's a big occasion, they've been there, they've done that, they're not going to be phased, they're not going to be ruffled. And what you actually have, and probably what people don't appreciate, is here's why you want them to do your final. Because Alex has been a host, and one of the things you have to do as a host is you'll be being told in your ear, okay, they're walking up to get the trophy, they're doing this, they're doing that. Well, when it's a caster that's going to do the trophy lift, you want somebody who understands it. And one thing Alex nails time and time and time again is those iconic moments at the end. You know, think Sadikist, and they've done it, they fucking won it, you know, and all of that stuff. You know, Alex nails the trophy lift, nails the narration, nails all of that stuff. So you want them in a final, because not only do you have Alex, who can sort of take over the show a little bit while the hosts and the analysts are getting ready on the desk, and he understands that, he's got that fantastic natural timing. But obviously, out of all of those people there, you will notice out of all of the commentators, there is only one former pro player. I mean, Blair notwithstanding, apologies, but you know what I mean. An international caliber, high-level pro player, and that's Sponge. And so when you get them, you get like a very rich smorgasbord of commentary. You've got Alex, he's quirky, he's funny, you know, he's young, he's hip, you know, all of that shit. And and it gets excited, gets giddy. You feel his genuine love for the game. It's infectious. Sponge at the other end, a wily veteran. He's played there, he understands it instinctively. It's not just about a narrative with him, it's almost like a shared experience, and it adds a gravitas to his commentary that not a lot of commentators have. So again, you know, 9.5, maybe a 10 for those guys. But what I will say, if Harry and Hugo maintain the level they hit in that Spirit phase game, which for me was probably the best cast of the whole event, maybe a little bit biased because I worked with the guys, and obviously I love everyone on this list dearly, consider them friends, but, you know, maybe, you know, because Harry looks up to me with his little baby eyes, you know, but for me, that was the best cast of the event. And I think if they can maintain that level, put them in stadiums, open them up. I want to see them do more international events and find out what they can do. But all told, that is one of the best cast majors we've ever had. And as I'll talk about later, they did it when the games weren't really all that good. And the level of Counterstrike wasn't really all that good. And that is a skill and an artistry even in itself. Like, we're talking about how good a job Vince did. Vince did that cast in what was really sort of a blowout between, Ents and Copenhagen Flames, and he still made it exciting, and he still made it entertaining. Let's talk about Analysts. And this one, not as glowing, unfortunately. A little bit of criticism. So, first thing, PGL did not hire enough analysts. For an event like this, it's a minimum of 4, and they hired 3, then brought in Devil Walk at the last minute. So let's start there. Devil Walk is a friend of mine. I've known him a long time. Full disclosure, when I was going to set up the first Counterstrike Players Association / Union prior to the existence of the CSPPA, he was one of the people I wanted to be the player representative, a founding member. We talked about it. We got it all set up. Why? Because he was someone who, at that stage in his career, was kind of between gigs. He'd been a player. He'd played at the highest level. He'd won a major. But also, had encountered some very unique problems. Pretty mature, level-headed guy. I've always liked him. What I'll say is, he wasn't ready for this level. I thought he had some nice segments. I thought he made some nice points. But he was clearly nervous on his first day on the desk. Very stiff, very rigid. Didn't speak in a way that, when you're talking to him privately, he's a lot more relaxed and talks a lot. He got better over the course of the broadcast and more fluid and got into the spirit of things a little bit more. But I'll also add, it takes a while, especially as a non-native English speaker, it takes a while to become really, really fluid. And this is a tale as old as time. I was the guy when all of European League of Legends fans wanted Deficio to be dropped because I can't understand what he's saying. He's talking too fast. His accent's too thick. I wrote an article saying Deficio is the future of European casting because I have the magic eye for talent. And what he needed to work through was his nerves, and he needed to find his rhythm. What Devil Walk needed before being thrown in to the major was just a few more events. I know he's done this kind of thing at a much lower level in the past, but if he'd had a run, he would have been much better. He's better. He's a much better analyst than the showing he put on at the major. Now, I have to ask, why was he there in the first place? This is, a valid question, even if it sounds harsh. And again, I love you, right? So I'm not impugning you. But, why didn't they get Yanko? Why didn't they get Moses? There were people out there who weren't working the major that you could have picked up, that would have done it, that would have added a lot more to the broadcast, had that experience. It's the highest level. You already made the mistake in not hiring enough people at the start. So surely you go to the experienced guys. And listen, I'm going to just say this. I don't think, and I'm going to talk about Maui in a minute and how he might break this paradigm, but just speaking candidly, I don't think there's a better analysis duo in the world in Counter-Strike that you can put together than Maniac and Yanko. I think those two together are like a fucking really nice glass of wine and a really expensive fucking cheese. You can decide who's who. It is the perfect pairing. They complement each other in so many little complex ways that it is a huge missed opportunity that Yanko wasn't there at the major. Just to talk about Maui's performance before I get to Maniac and then Pimp, Maui Snake obviously making his debut. I dropped him a message as well. I think he's fantastic. And you know what? I really liked his energy. I really liked his analysis. I also like that he wasn't overawed by the occasion and still proffered criticism. One of the big problems we have in esports, just all of it, is people are scared to criticize players. And there are entire esports scenes where the desk segments are essentially dictated to, not by experience or knowledge or any of this stuff, but by fear. People are legitimately afraid to criticize a pro player because they are worried about the backlash they will get from the player and then by extension, the player's fans. And yes, I am talking about Dota 2, but they're not alone. And we don't have that in Counterstrike. And this is why, whatever you think of him, every analyst that comes after him owes Thorin a huge debt, because he is the guy who, yes, he will say some absolutely fucking crazy shit. You never know where it's going to go. That empowers every analyst to, well, if Thorin's going to a 10, if I go to a 9, no one is going to talk about it. I cannot tell you enough how important that is for a desk where everyone feels free and liberated to express their opinions, because that's what they're there to do. They might not be right. You might not agree with them at home. Players might disagree with them. But the reality is you want your analysts to be honest and analyze the game. So, I love Maui Snake's energy. I thought he was fantastic. He looks the part. He is the part. And I feel that he has proven he definitely deserves to be in another major. There's the minor detail as well that he is North American representation. And in a global game, you need that. I would like to see a Brazilian ex-pro come onto the desk at some point. I think I've made this point before. I think with so many Brazilian teams dominating the North American RMR now, or the Americas RMR, I should say, sorry. I think we are going to need a Brazilian pro that has the anecdotes and the insight that maybe the rest of us don't have on this side of the water. And there are people out there, you know, they're still playing some of them that I think would be great for a broadcast, sure. But there are people out there that you could get, speak fluent English, and could fit in a broadcast. Obviously, the dream is if Fallen or Taco retire, one of them. You know, Taco is a very funny dude. I think he'd be great on desk work. Zeus as well is another good shout. Health problems notwithstanding. So anyway, Maui Snake, I thought, did fantastic. He's an elite level analyst, and he proved it at the major. So again, 10 out of 10 for him, I suppose. 9 out of 10, whatever. Top of his game. In fact, no, he can only be a 9. Do you know why he can only be a 9? Maniac exists, and if Maniac is the 10, then everyone else is a 9, because right now he is just hands down the best analyst in CSGO by it's not even close. I really like Yanko, but I think even if Yanko were here, and he's gonna message me on WhatsApp, if Yanko were here, he would admit there is a level of delivery and a level of polish and a type of energy that Yanko doesn't have. And so if you only take one, you probably do take Maniac, unless there's a specific reason not to. But this is why they make such a good pairing. Yanko is the dry humor, dour, critical former coach, a little bit kind of like, happy to go in on certain players, won't spare his friends, real criticism. Maniac is more like a romantic. He loves the game. Everything he says is on point in terms of his overall analysis. But on the type of desk segments we did this major, he's the guy. He's the guy that will tell the story, talk about the pressure, talk about the mistakes, talk about where things went wrong, talk about what it means, talk about the stakes, set the scene, and really good at bouncing back and forth off people. Just fantastic. And, Maniac is a guy that, when he does a desk segment, you are able to understand the emotions behind the analysis as well. He very often will say, this happened, this is why, this is what it means. And it's like that little trifecta of an analysis. And as I'll get to in a second, these guys were all criminally underused because we still don't do our desk segments right. But before we go into that, this is the other unfortunate bit. I am never sold on Pimp as an analyst, and it's really hard because I've known Jacob a long time, and I like him, and I think he's a cool guy, but there's something about the way he packages his opinions that don't work for me. And it's especially bad in when the desk segments are structured the way they are at our majors, because you don't get a telestrator, you don't get a weatherman segment with a touch screen, you don't get replays being pulled up because you're talking about something. You're not having graphics made in real time to zip across when you make a point. It is you standing there with friends telling a story about the game you just watched. And unfortunately, because we're so anachronistic, in terms to what you get with a real sports broadcast analysis desk segment. It doesn't play a pimp's strengths. It's really strange because he goes on Twitter and he'll say he went through this phase of like expressing really outrageous opinions. Like maybe Simple was the problem in Navi. Maybe Nico is the best player in the world right now. You know, things like this. And it's like, where's that shit on the desk? Like, if you want to toss a fucking grenade into a fucking conversation, make it on the desk. Make it on the fucking desk. Don't sit there and go, yes, they're doing really well and I hope they can win. Obviously, it's a high-pressure environment and we're going to see who has the experience to keep their nerve. Just platitudes, just throwaway statements that it's only analysis in name, not in function for what you need it to be in a show. And then you get in a green room and you go, thumbs are out. Yeah, Simple is actually not that good. Like, where was that when we could have turned it into entertainment? It's not that he doesn't know the game. Remember, Pimp is slept on in terms of his professional career. Pimp was a guy that was exported to NA, played in a very good Team Liquid squad, played in all the best tournaments you can imagine, been in some of the best teams historically. And so at the end of the day, that's a guy I want talking about stuff in the game. Now, if I can't empower him to do that and I can't give him the tools to do that, I want to hear big opinions. Because you've got to be confident when you're on a desk. I've earned the right to the opinion I'm about to express and I can justify it. If you're afraid of that, you cannot be on the desk in the first place. And so I think the desk lacked that in the Pimp segments. I thought it just lacked that energy. Maniac did a lot of heavy lifting when they were in a duo, and I feel that, maybe it's the broadcast doesn't play to Pimp's strengths, but and this sounds savage as fuck, and I'm so sorry, but I'm always honest. If I was putting a crew together for a death segment, there's people I would pick over him. Now, with all of that said, I do want to say we can't do another major where the death segments are sort of like that, a bit of filler between the maps, between the games. And basically you are relying on fantastic storytellers and entertaining personalities like Maniac and Yanko and Maui Snake and whoever else, to basically keep people from not leaving the stream. There's got to be some substance to it. We've got to start getting the tools to do good analysis segments. I'm hoping by the time we get to Rio, ESL are going to have taken some of that money that they've got from sources and actually start applying it and putting it into, let's create some really good desk segments. Because I hate ESL Pro League desk segments as well, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Their desk segments are fucking whack. It's just, here's 2 minutes talking about a topic, and now here's a DHL logo flying across your screen. Here's some, here's me having to do an ad read. Here's another topic. Here's this, here's that. It's like, you cannot even fucking discuss an idea. You can't even get into it. One of the things I've always said, because people don't seem to understand this in Reddit world, and that is that I want to run a dynamic desk as well, and we need to start doing more of this in esports. And what do I mean by a dynamic desk? A typical esports desk is, hi, I am a host. Hello, analyst number one. I believe you have an opinion about team number one. Yes, analyst number one has an opinion about team number one. This is my opinion. I will now hand it over to analyst number two for his opinion about team number one. Thank you, analyst number one. Yes, my opinion, to build on analyst number one's point, is that I, analyst number two, think this about team number one. Back to you, host. Host, thank you for that. Here are some stats or graphics to bring up. I will now segue into another part of the conversation. That is not a good desk, in my opinion, and too many esports broadcasts are done like that. What I used to do, I used to tell my analysts, talk over each other if you have to, shout at each other, argue. Like, if you disagree with someone's point, interrupt them, interject. And they're the rules. Everybody knows. So no one's going to get upset. And what you find is, you get a bit more energy there. And then it's on me as the host to come in and go, right, boys. Okay, leave it there. We're going to have to get into the game. We'll find out which one of you was right. And boom, it just adds a bit more spice, a bit more energy. What Shocks was doing, if you noticed it, because as I said, before she got hired for the major, when I was saying, hire Shocks, it's in Antwerp, she wants to do CSGO, she's from Belgium, she's one of the best hosts to ever do it, this is like a no-brainer. One of the reasons I was doing that is because actually as a host, she has I can tell by the way she works, she has a very similar philosophy. She will poke and poke and poke at the analysts to get them to do that if they're not doing it. And if they don't do it, she'll toss the hand grenade into the conversation. Now, it's a little bit harder for her to do it in CSGO because she doesn't have the credibility. Credibility establishment is something else. Sidebar that. She doesn't have the, quote, credibility with CS fans. She doesn't know anything about the game, they will say, not realizing she doesn't have to. She just has to fastidiously research the subject, which, of course, she does. But she can definitely do it in League of Legends. And if you watch her desks on, like, LEC, she does that. She will go, well, what about when this happened? No. And then you force the analysts to engage with this, spicy topic. It makes the desks really, really exciting and really vibrant. And so Shocks did a fantastic job, especially because credibility establishment, was one of those things where it's like you have to get over with an audience and have them believe you're entitled to an opinion before you can give the opinion. Just on the point of credibility establishment, one of the things I hope people noticed I was doing in Stockholm, and it's something I do at a lot of my events. When I introduce somebody at the start of a broadcast, I tell you why their opinion matters. And this is just a little tip for any aspiring hosts out there. The audience might never have watched the CSGO tournament before. And if I go, I'm here with Yanko and I'm here with Thorin, and they're like, well, who the fuck are these guys? What you do is you go, I'm here with Yanko, former professional player in Serbia, former coach of FaZe and MIBR, and he's joined by Duncan Thorin Shields, the esports historian who has been around chronicling the stories of our scene for 20 years. And now you at home go, oh yeah, right, okay, these cunts know what they're talking about, right? And that is just a good way to build a story at the start of the show. But I thought the other thing that Shocks did really, really well, obviously, when they were bringing players on the desk, so they were doing like interviews from the desk, on the desk, she just rolled with that. Very natural, very charismatic, helped people come out their shell. Wonderful banter when your Kindar was on there and stuff. She just did a bang-up job. Like, I defy anyone to have watched her work at this major and say you don't want her back for another CSGO event. I think if you feel that way, you probably don't really understand what you're watching. 10 out of 10, obviously, for Shocks. Desk segments need to be re-upped, changed a little bit. Now, the other thing was, obviously, Freya was doing some desk work too. I kind of feel she was underused a little bit, I want to say. I watched a lot of the VODs. I should have added it up. But it really felt like she didn't get a lot of time this broadcast, which I think kind of sucks because they had to make a decision, I guess, like especially on like the finals day. But it didn't really feel like Freya got an equal share of the time. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's how it felt. I don't know if it's because maybe some of the segments just happened to be longer for Shocks than Freya on the day she worked because of full time or whatever. But it really felt like I didn't see a lot of Freya. And I think that's sad because like Freya is in this position where if you're hiring Freya, now is the time to decide where you want to use her. Yes, she can be a stage host. Yes, she can be an interviewer. Yes, she can be a desk host. Personally, that's where I think she's at her best. But you need to decide, tournament organizers. You need to decide. It's not good for a career that you're like moving her all around and putting her here and putting her there and doing this. And she's so game for anything. She's gonna say yes to it all. But I feel that Freya is an excellent desk host. I think she's gonna be the go-to pick in CSGO, provided Shox, because Shox is always gonna have to go and do some League of Legends work. She's not gonna do all of the CS events. Yeah, just please give Freya more time. I didn't see enough of her at this major, and I think that's sad. Then, obviously, we go over to the stage host. This was Frankie's first event back, I believe, after giving birth. And I sort of feel there was some style problems with the way they were constructing what she was meant to go out and do. She had to do some monologues to introduce things for the crowd, and I always feel that's a little bit stilted. I think what you need to do for a stage host, by the way, it's not Frankie choosing to do this isn't a criticism of Frankie, she's excellent at what she does, but it's if you send your stage host out to a group of people, some of whom might not even speak English, some of whom might not even give a fuck about the rest of the day because they've just seen their team get knocked out, and all they're thinking about is when's it appropriate to head to the exits, and your host has to deliver here is a month. Now, what I want from my stage hosts is I want them to get out there and short, snappy, high energy, OJ, just the master of that, and how we miss him in esports. I think once again, Frankie will always say yes to this type of stuff, and it's just kind of I don't know. I think PGL, the way they build a show, they really don't understand how hard it is to keep a crowd engaged over a long period of time as a stage host. I also would have liked Frankie to be used in that kind of, when Frankie's really, really good is when she gets to go in the crowd and she does those little mischievous interactions. I feel like some of her best moments in the Counterstrike community have all come from that. And I feel she didn't get really used in a great way here. Did she actually do that once? Maybe I missed that in the VODs. I was trying to concentrate on the shows and the games. But anyway, the bottom line is Freya was underused. Frankie wasn't used in the right way. But they did great job, obviously, both of them, besides that. So overall, for the talent pool, my thoughts are this. I think we've proven that, with this group of guys, you can run an event and you don't, listen, you're not going to miss a Richard Lewis. You're not going to miss, some of the other guys. It's going to look bad when it's on paper, but you can do a show. You can do a great show. And I hope people are just going to be more open to, giving these people more of a chance to carry our scene moving forward. Remember, loads of these people now that are going to the LANs, they're the people that carried us through the online era. They do deserve this. They have earned the right to enjoy this, and the community should fully support them in that. So for me, I think overall, I'll say for the talent and how well they did as a whole, solid 8 out of 10. Certainly, there were some hindrances in show choice that are unavoidable. And I was going to knock a point off for Frankie's first day outfit. I'm just kidding. Who am I to speak about fashion? But anyway, I think overall, fantastic job from all of the crew. The games, right? It's a major. It's meant to be about the fucking games, isn't it? I think overall, we didn't get a classic in terms of the level of Counter-Strike that was being played here. Variety of reasons for that. The earlier stages were like any other tournament. It didn't feel like a major, in my opinion, till we got in the stadium. And then, you think about the stadium games and how that sort of went. Kind of just, weird. A lot of the games, like Furia having a run, Spirit having a run, Ents having a run, Copenhagen Flames having a run. And unfortunately, you did get some games that, they couldn't deliver. You think about the first day of the quarterfinals in the stadium, you have I thought, a pretty good series. NIP versus FaZe. FaZe wins their map, NIP wins their map. It's Inferno. What's going to happen? FaZe dominate. Right? Okay, good. Hampus Brolan, Essetag all having like their moments, Rops popping off. There was loads of cool stuff in that series. Like, it wasn't a classic, but it was a solid LAN game. Spirit Furia fucking stank. It stank. It stank as a game. It stank as a game, and it was only as close as it was because it was Vertigo Ancient. The quality was poor. The star players that you wanted to get going, like K Serato, 20 kills. Fuck this. Well, this game was really poor. It was very one-sided. And obviously, Spirit is a super cool story, but this game smelled to high heaven. It just wasn't good. It didn't feel like there was a sense of occasion there at all. And that was the second game, right? So that I think that was the one that they ended on. Then the next day you have Ents Copenhagen Flames. That's a bit stompy and one-sided. Another Vertigo game, which, I don't think is great for viewers, even though, as we've established, Lord and St. Davy, it's fantastic to play. Copenhagen Flames kind of felt like they were limping through it. That another dead team at the major, which, by the way, that was a feature of the whole major in general. We had a lot of dead teams, a lot of rosters that were going to change, rosters that had just changed. You had breaking stories about teams like Cloud9 and that Hobbit stuff, and just lots of strange things happening all of the time that just seem to impact and give weird auras and atmosphere to the games. Outsiders, by the way, I'm glad it's a dead team. I never want to see those 5 players ever play together again for as long as I am watching Counterstrike. They are the new flip side. Fuck their vision of Counterstrike. The meta is already boring as shit. The map pool already makes for close games. There is no fucking rational justification to be executing onto a bomb site with 12 seconds left in this meta. You are killing the sport. So never want to see them play again. I know they've split up, but if later on in happier times they decide, hey, why don't we roll it back? Do not roll it back. I demand you do not roll it back. Absolutely horrible. Anyway, you had Navi Heroic. Now listen, this to me was the first game that felt like a major, like an actual major, like a real bona fide major. Why? Because we got a slightly weaker Navi, didn't we? And we got a heroic that always threatened like they're going to do something. And they won their map. And then they took 14 rounds on Navi's map. And then we go in a nuke, and Navi aren't playing nuke. And Heroic, they used to be one of the best nuke teams in the world. Are we going to see one of the greatest upsets in Counter-Strike history? No, we're fucking not, because Heroic are perennial bottlers. But I will tell you what, it was entertaining to watch them bottle the way that they did. It was entertaining to watch Cadian team flash a fucking winnable round, so they lose the match, get mocked by Simple, doing all of this shit. It was entertaining. It was high stakes. You could see how devastated Heroic were. You could see how relieved Navi were. It was a game that carried weight and significance, and 75 kills from Papa Electronic at LAN, one of the great LAN performances. Sad if it turns out to be one of his last runs as a servant of Navi. Right, I'm at a major now, but it took until the last quarterfinal for us to get there. Then, obviously, Spirit phase, fucking classic. I know it was only 2 maps, but Team Spirit were a revelation at the major. You always want an underdog story. You always want a run from a team that you didn't expect. And people need to make a bigger deal about this. People really need to make a bigger deal about this. Patsy and Siren were playing their first ever Tier 1 LAN at the major. That is a mad story. Like, you need everyone, Launders, Coach Launders, when you get some time, do a demo review of these 2 kids. Let's make a massive deal about it. We've been talking for years about the CIS region and it's fucking, all this talent it's got. Spirit just took 2 rookies who never played a Tier 1 LAN before to the major semi-fucking finals. That is crazy. That is crazy. It's such a mad story. Super cool game. Got a 10 out of 10 cast to go with it. let's say the cast of the major for me, Ents, they sort of trickled away. They weren't up to it. It was one of those where it's like, listen, you're good. You are maybe the third best team in the world right now, but you ain't ready for a big final. And they got found out, and Navi made it to the final. So not a great game, not a great series, but whatever, right? Because now we get the final that we all want, and that is the FaZe Navi final. Everybody had this, I think, as the go-to choice, and holy shit, this legitimately was a good final. This was a good final. I know that Simple went missing. I know Simple, I think only finished, top 4 players by his standards. Crazy. I know Boomich had a nightmare, not like the type of nightmare he had after the final of the last major. But I don't care. Here's what I wanted. I wanted drama. I wanted a human element. I wanted a fucking story. And I got it. And I got it moment to moment, round to round. FaZe's pick, Inferno, 1916. They're 8-1 up. 8-1 up. On T-side. They're done. They're free and clear. They are absolutely cruising. Then mistakes. Carrigan making individual mistakes. Looks like Carrigan's going to have a fucking nightmare. And then, boom. He steps up. Carrigan, playing well. 3-mans, 2-mans, clutches. What the fuck is going on? They get it over the line in overtime. Wow, what a game. Surely, though, on Nuke, Navi must have a game plan. Okay, cool. Rain turned up. Rain things happened. It is one of the most profoundly brilliant individual performances on a single map in major history. It is absolutely crazy. There were rounds that defied logic. Obviously, we're watching it on the No Majors Club. You can go back and watch the VOD. You can hear us. We're like, can't believe some of the stuff he's doing. Winning clutches by surviving with 2 HP. Dodging bullets like he's fucking Neo. Just crazy, crazy shit. And the story we all wanted, right? I know if you're a Navi fan, especially as this might be the last time we see this lineup with everything that's going on in Ukraine, yes, there would have been a poignancy to Navi lifting the trophy, but there is also a poignancy to Carrigan laying to rest the ghosts of Boston 2018, of, Rops, 2 years fallow at Mouse Sports, doing nothing, being a loyal, dedicated servant to his first professional club, finally getting a chance to win the big trophy with all of his talent. Twists making that difficult decision to leave his brothers in NA behind and come over. Brokey, a guy who was worried he wasn't going to get stickers in the game, now has a fucking major trophy in his young career. And Rain, the oldest MVP of a major final, played out of his skin. Someone that the fans wanted to replace with JKS, of course. Just crazy. Crazy story. So many cool aspects to it. Great speech by Carrigan at the end. Never give up, never doubt yourself, always back yourself. I'm 32 and I've just won a major. So, the games. Low quality, but the drama carried it through. And I think a fantastic final. We've seen some dogshit major finals down the years. This wasn't one of them. It might be the best since Boston. I don't know. I'll let you guys in the chat decide that. Yes, exactly. Don't remind me about Astralis of Angar, please. So yes, let's put a pin in the games. Overall, not great, not classics. Scruffy at the start, elevated at the end. 6.5, maybe 7, but probably 6.5 overall for the quality of games. Elevated with the semi-finals and the final. If you took them in isolation, you get an 8. So, right, I think that is about it, except Jerky in the chat does raise a good point. There was another little, thing to talk about. I am going to make a specific video on it when I get a chance. I am going to write an article. It has to be addressed. There was an issue with security at this event. Well, actually, before we even get to that, there was also an issue with fans having, terrible seating for the last few days. There was a number of issues with that. People had seats where you couldn't see the screens, couldn't see the stages. You had a stanchion in the way. And not great overall in terms of value for some of the customers. There were some issues there that you have to resolve and get right. You know, it's going to happen. I don't think a lot of kids and I've seen this from the reaction to the Rio ticket sellout. I don't think a lot of kids buy a lot of tickets for themselves for a lot of like high profile events. You're always going to get like shitty cheap seats and stuff like that. But some of these were like people had paid a premium price and they were sat in parts of the stadium where you could barely see the big screen, let alone the stage. That's unacceptable, and probably PGL should do a little bit of PR work, reach out to those people. There was Twitter threads, there was Reddit threads, and put that right if you can, because it sucks for those guys. But the real issue I want to write about is security again. I've been talking a lot about this down the years because I feel like we are sleepwalking into something awful and I don't want it to happen. Just to put it in context, it's only a couple of years ago we had somebody tweet that they had brought a gun into an iBuyPower event that weren't making people walk through the metal detectors and weren't checking bags. And they had to tell everybody to leave and have everyone go through the metal detectors again. It turned out it was a stupid joke, a really inappropriate joke by a stupid kid. That's going to be the case 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100. The one time it isn't, we are going to have a tragedy. People I know could get hurt. People could get hurt. And we've got to do better with our security at events. And by all accounts, this was really, really bad. I talked to a number of people about it. And obviously, this is, something that I've mentioned. But this was that guy from the Fnatic Ultras saying, what an insane day. I was in the CSGO Place hotel lobby and every 5 minutes a different team would come down. Fun fact, I wasn't actually allowed to be there. Ha ha. And this is a guy that, for me, raises a lot of red flags. He raises a lot of red flags. I'm going to talk about them separately on a separate thing. But the bottom line is this is somebody who's on a Discord that is dedicated to harassing people, essentially. That's what it does. And it's called the Fnatic Fight Club. He has this weird sense of entitlement, demands that, Sam, should hire him to work for Fnatic. He calls himself an ultra. For those that don't know, because obviously, I used to go to a lot of football events, but when you call yourself an ultra, it means you are the most violent type of hooligan, the most dedicated and violent person. You might have a punch-up with football fans, but you head for the hills when the ultras turn up. They're typically armed. They're the ones that do the murders at football games. The ultras. If you know anything about Italian football, I'm a Lazio fan. The ultras at Lazio, the Irreducibili, they are not good people. They are fucking dangerous people. And so when you start calling yourself a fucking ultra in esports, I don't know why we would want to adopt something that emanates from a culture of violence to sort of boast and brag. And then when you start looking into this guy and he's like a wannabe MMA dude, it's no, like, what the fuck? I mean, the worst part was that guy was at the event because G2 had paid for him to be there because they thought it would be funny to Fnatic, but they didn't realize, Carlos, etc., didn't know who he was, didn't know his background. And so I was told, and I'm trying to get confirmation on this before I write my piece, I am told, because I forwarded it on and said, guys, this guy is bragging about being in a restricted area and he's bothering players, and this, I'm sure it's going to be fine, but you should probably take a long, hard look at this. And I got told he was removed from the venue. Now, I don't know why. I don't know what he did. I don't know if it was just because of the tweet or some other reason. But in the end, I was told he was removed from the event, and his tweets are is that true? He was holding up signs with what site to go to? Is that real? I don't know. I'll confirm that. I obviously have no way of knowing one way or the other. I wasn't at the event. But bottom line is I heard he was removed. I don't know why. I hope it was nothing serious. But we've got to start doing better. And I'm just going to read you because I did some work around it because I had a few people telling me, listen, the security here is not good. No one's checking armbands. They didn't use metal detectors. They weren't searching bags. And it's like, yeah, this is worrying me, you know. So I'm going to read you what a friend sent me. Yesterday, I came into an event with a bag. They didn't check it. They were checking every other bag, but not every bag. The ticket checking area is located a little far from the main doors. Security was just a few people, no more than 5, and only a handful were actively engaging in bag searches. When my bag got searched, I asked one of them about what they were doing with the bags, and they said they only checked some. When she looked in my bag, she asked about my water bottle. I had 2. Which was store-bought. She asked if they were original. I think she meant unopened. I said no. She asked me to open them and sniffed them, then checked my main bag zipper. I said there was a hoodie in there, but she didn't look. My bag had 2 other zipper pockets, but she didn't go near them. I finished up with her and walked 2 or 3 minutes to the main doors and entered the event. Where the main doors were on the street, they were blocked off to get onto the main road. There was a police fan. There were police there with a fan stand. You had to go past them to go towards the ticket check and security. It was very different from PGL Stockholm, which I also attended. There was no metal detectors, but they did have and use metal detectors in Stockholm. So there you go. They seem to have a preoccupation for people smuggling in alcohol, but weren't doing thorough checks. We are really cutting it fine. We're cutting it by the seat of our pants when it comes to security issues in esports. Unfortunately, as it is at every big sporting event, a security detail and metal detectors are absolutely mandatory. The bare minimum. The bare minimum. I would even go so far as to say, as you see at the NBA, you need people in the crowd. You need security in the crowd, monitoring suspicious people who look like freaks and weirdos. They've stopped a number of court invasions in the NBA by taking that protocol. And on top of that, you've just had a spate of pitch invasions in football where football players are getting assaulted. And it's coming. It is coming to esports. It is unavoidable. It is going to happen at one of these events. And we must do everything we can to mitigate it. And we're not. And so I hope PGL, when I write my article, I'm going to forward them a copy and obviously ask for comment. But I am going to be addressing this issue because you have esports organizations pandering to ultras, pandering to people who raise serious red flags, pandering to people who are admittedly going into restricted areas to bother and harass people, and you also, at the same time, have lax security. This here is how the worst happens. And, you know, I'd rather it didn't than me get the not even satisfaction of saying, well, I did fucking say this was coming. So look, as with every live event, you get some good, you get some bad. But for me, that certainly is a middle tier major. It's not going to be down there with Krakow and obviously, face it, London. It's going to sit in the middle of the roads, you know, with other fair to middling events, and it certainly didn't scale the heights. You know, it's no Boston, it's no Cologne, it's no Katowice, but it was solid, it was functional, and it was crucially an improvement. The end.